Hey everybody, welcome to YouTube's Scale Modeling channel. This evening we're going to start a multi-part series on building and detailing the Revell-Monogram 140H scale B-24D. You know, this kit came out about 40 years ago and it has really stood the test of time. So with part one, we're going to focus on detailing the wings, the engine nacelles, and the landing gear bays. So let's get started. The wings are designed so that you glue the engines in place right here and then close up the wings. Now, to do that, you've got to paint this engine and detail it and put some wiring on here and then close it up, and of course you stand a chance of damaging it, and you have to, of course, put tissue over it, masking tape, when you go ahead and put it all together and paint the wings. But there's another way, and if you carefully scrape down this raised ridge here, here, and on the upper wing here and here, and flatten them out, you can install this the engine, the kit supplied engines, after you glue the wings together, which is a much better way to do it. So what that allows you to do too is, since you'll have a hole here, you can glue some strips of plastic, evergreen strip stock, on the inside areas here, and that will make this bond a lot stronger when you put super glue on it, and it won't crack. The other thing is the engine nacelle fronts have got these two positioning pins here and here, and they're raised just enough that it causes the part to go like this when you glue it in place. So the way you deal with that is you just go ahead and run this across a stationary piece of sandpaper, one or two passes, gets it nice and flat, and then you'll get a much tighter fit. So I did those things on this wing, the port wing. So again, I scraped these down, upper and lower, and now not only does the engine pop in after you glue the wings together, but this is a Resin2Details R-1830 engine, and it also fits with some slight modifications, and I'll explain those in a second. So let's go ahead and take the tape off so that I can show you how pops right out and pops right in. And the same thing with this one. This engine comes right out and it goes right in. So you want to, you definitely want to make this modification because it'll make your building experience much better. And I forgot to put some tape on this side, so we can go ahead and tape that up, and I'll show you again how this just pops right in. There you go. And so if you, as I showed you on my B-17 build, you put like 10 thousandths plastic sheeting on the back of this, just super glue it in place, and so that you can use tester's glue. You put some tester's glue right on here and a little bit right up here, and that allows you some working time when you put this in place to properly position it. So I really like these Resin2Details engine fronts, and they have a lot of detail to them, and you just have to carefully paint them, and they'll look much better and enhance the appearance of the model. The other thing is, you can see how I have sanded that down. Again, it's just like one or two passes and you're done. And it gives you a much tighter fit on the engine nacelle. It goes just like that. Much tighter fit. So I highly recommend that you consider making these modifications. And I'll show you what it looks like on the inside. Go ahead and take all this tape off because I got to do a much better job of taping it when I go ahead and glue it. Almost there. But a few more pieces I got to take off, and move this out of the way. We can go ahead and open this up. You can see how I've scraped all that down. And it's a rather crude scraping process. You take a number 11 X-Acto blade and just carefully shave it down, a little at a time. And what happens too is there's a ridge here. Now I had cut these ridges off to try to get a tighter fit, and it didn't work. But you can see the ridge on this side right here. As you scrape down on the inside, this gets very, very thin. And then you can just take a sanding stick like this and just carefully do this. Get it nice and flat. So those are the modifications I'm making to the wings. Aside from putting a little bit of plastic in here and in here, so that when I drill out the exhaust ports for the engines, there'll be a little bit of depth to it. So yeah, we're almost there, making progress, and it's looking pretty good. I did on some of the surfaces, on the fuselage too, there's these dimples here, and they're not on this side, but here you can see there's a slight dimple here, and a dimple here, and a dimple here. So let me go ahead and mark this one too so I don't forget it. And you can just sand those out. They're very, very shallow. So again, these are the modifications I'm making to the wings, and once I get these drilled out, I'll show you how that looks. The modifications that I made to the Resin2Detail engines, and I got to tell you, these R-1830 engines look really, really cool. I have a set of these for my Monogram C47 build, and once you paint them, they look really, really nice. So I sanded down the backing a little bit to make that thinner, and I'll go ahead and super glue some 10/1000 sheet to it so that I can, as I said, I'll be able to glue everything in place with Tester's glue. But you need to sand down a little bit off of this cylinder head and this cylinder head, and this is the top, and then this cylinder head, which is on the bottom, you got to sand that down a little bit too, and you can see where I did that there. And once the cowling front is on here, you're not going to see those cylinders that were sanded down. So those are modifications that I made, and I had to do that on the C47, although not as much. And like I said, once it's painted and popped in place, it'll look pretty good. So that's how I made the modifications to these Resin 3D printed engines to get them to fit. I used a .046 inch bit to drill down through the exhaust ports, and then after I drilled them out, then I put a plastic strip on backing here with some super glue, so that again there was some depth to these exhaust ports. And the engine exhaust is what turns the air injector, which injects pressurized air into the engines and increases the horsepower rating for the engines. Pretty ingenious design, actually. So aside from the modifications I made to the engine locations and the fact that I'm going to use the Resin2Detail 3D printed engines, I think we are ready to go ahead and glue these bad puppies up. I've got the wings taped up, and the Resin2Detail engines fit quite nicely in both cowlings. Actually, this cowling is probably a micron larger than this one, but that's okay. And you've got plenty of room to play with here. So this one's a little bit tighter, but that's okay. So what I need to do now to prepare the engine, I'll go ahead and sand just a little bit more up the top and bottom so they can move around a little bit. And then I'll laminate a piece of plastic on the back of this so I can use tester's glue to glue everything in place. And I think we're good. So now we can go ahead and glue up the wings. And how I'm going to do it is I'm going to use tester's glue on all of these points here and then tape it up real tight. And then once the tester's glue's dried, then I can run a bead of super glue on the outside to seal everything. And I'll go ahead and tape these and run super glue from the inside of these areas here, and then also put little bits of plastic on the inside to reinforce these areas. So we're looking good. We are ready to glue up the wings. I've got both wings glued up, and the way I did it was I used tester's red tube glue and put a tiny drop of glue at each one of the positioning pinpoints, and then a tiny bead along the backside here and along the outer edge. Pressed it together, and I used a lot of tape, and I got a really tight fit. So then what I did was I didn't put any glue on the engine nacelles. And after this was all dry, what I did was individually I positioned the engine nacelles so that the top and bottom half were pretty much in line with each other, and hit it with a drop of super glue on each one of these. And then when it dried, then I ran a bead across here to make it really, really solid. And then I put tiny strips on the inside here so that these wouldn't crack. And it also acted as a reinforcer because the engine nacelles tended to do this. So pressing them together and then putting this extra strip on the inside made it really, really strong. So on this one, I did the same thing, pulled off all the tape, and then ran a tiny bead of super glue all along here, all the way around. So now this one is ready for its initial sanding. And the other thing was, this was the one that had the indentations in some areas, dimples, and so I went ahead and sanded them out here, here, here. There was one here and here, and then there were some scratches on the surface of the plastic, so I took care of them too. So now what I need to do is go ahead and do the same thing here. Pull all the tape off, put a bead of super glue on it, and we'll be ready. And the wings are really, really strong, and they need to be strong because they're going to support a lot of weight on this aircraft, because it takes a lot of weight to balance it on its tricycle landing gear. And the other thing is that you're going to lose a little bit of the detail. I'm looking for my pointer here. Because of this seam work, I'm going to lose the detail from here to here and from here to here on both sides of the nacelles. So what I'll do is I'll just put a little bit of tape here, and when I get to it, I'll just carefully sand that off with fine grit paper, and it'll be fine. And then once all the work is done on the wings, I'll go ahead and get a flat sanding block. I'll probably use this and just do one of these numbers here like this in order to get the surface flat so that the facing will fit nice and tight. So the other thing I need to do is I'll use the monogram engines, these backings, and I'll outline here on 30 thousandths plastic, and then that'll be the backing for the new engines that I'll put in here. And these will have to be a little bit smaller because of the reinforcing strips I put inside there, but there's tabs in here that will hold it in place, and I'll just use a little bit of tester's glue to glue everything up, and then that'll provide a good backing for the Resin2Detail 3D printed engines. So yeah, we are moving along really, really well. I've got the starboard side wing completed, and of course I've got silver paint all over it to check everything. The dimples are gone, and it looks pretty good. Now on the other one, you see these protrusions right here where it doesn't fit very well. So what I did here was I sanded them out first, got them flat, and then worked my way across the seam this way. And that came out pretty good. So I lost a little more detail than I thought I would. When I get it all cleaned up, I will remove the detail up to here and here and here and here and preserve the rest of this on top. But yeah, looks pretty good. I like it. So it came out pretty good, and it's, like I said before, it's nice and strong. So what I need to do now is I'll go ahead and remove all the silver paint, smooth it out, and then polish the plastic with a steel wool pad, and then we'll move on to this one. So yeah, everything's coming along really, really well. So we're good. I've got the second wing all completed and the plastic polished using these steel wool pads, and I use these for every kit I work on, and they work great. They make a mess, but you can clean it up. So next, what I did was I created a template, and using the backings that are in the kit to hold the kit supplied engines, I created these separate backings for the Resin2 engines. And I glued I had to sand these down a little bit to get this backing thinner, and then I glued a 10/1000 sheet to the back of it and cut it out so that now I can use Tester's tube glue to glue plastic to plastic, and it gives me some working time to adjust the engines so that they're straight and in line and centered. So here's what it looks like with the engine cowling faces on it. I'm going to get rid of that bug. And came out pretty good. So you can move these around so that you can adjust their positioning. Looks pretty good. Really, really going to enhance the appearance of the model once these are painted. And I've used Resin2Details 3D printed engines on my B-17 build, on my C-47 build, and now these R-1830s are going to be used for my B-24 build. Now, the other thing I wanted to mention was that I looked at using these cowling fronts, and they fit fairly well on the engine nacelles, but the problem is they lack any detail like the monogram kits have on the fronts. The nice thing is the air intakes are open, and the drawback is you're going to have to carefully tape this in place and then hit it with tiny drops of super glue all the way around, and then clean up the super glue. So you can't put super glue on here and then sit this on top of it, because This is resin, and you get an instantaneous bond. So you've got to preset it in place, and then use the tiny drops around the perimeter, the outside of the perimeter. So I don't think that I can scribe the lines in here. I don't think this type of resin looks good scribed, but it sure does, and the fit is just really, really good on these. But I don't know, kind of out to lunch on it. If I put the Resin2Detail engine in here and then put this face on it, I mean, it really, really looks good. I'd have to do some more work to get it to fit correctly, but I think I'll end up just using these because they fit better on here. So I'm all done with the modifications to the engine nacelles for the 3D printed engines, and now I'm going to go ahead and add detail to landing gear wells. So that's the next effort, and I'm really pleased with the way it came out. Got a lot of dirt and dust on the wings, but once I clean everything up and prime it, it's going to look pretty good. I've scrap built some detail needed in the wheel well for the landing gear, and it came out pretty good. I'll explain how I did this in just a minute. The one thing I noticed, though, is that the distance from here to here and here to here is different. This is longer and this is shorter. So you just need to be mindful of that. So how I did this was I used the Edward exterior detail set as a starting point, and I used the framing, this framing here, to be able to trace parts onto 20 thousandths plastic. And the reason why I did that is these are really, really difficult to glue into place, and not only that, they don't fit. So if you trace it on the plastic, then you can adjust it by simply sanding it down. I tried laminating it, and you still had the same problem. So I just went ahead and for these long pieces, I just made two. Now for this other one that goes this way, I laminated the photo etch part onto plastic, the 20 thousandths plastic right here, and I'll go ahead and then cut that out, and then I have to cut it to kind of form fit it into place. So I've got these two ready to go, and if you'll notice, this has got 4 holes, this has 3 holes. This is for the shorter side, so I can cut and sand down this edge, which I didn't do on that one, so I learned a little bit from this. So these go in first, and then I will then cut this out, sand it down, get it nice and square and even, and then I'll be able to cut it up into 3 sections, just like I did here. So yeah, it looks pretty good, and it also allows me to use tiny drops of tester's glue to glue it in place and adjust everything. And then once the tester's glue dried, then I hit it with some super glue. It's not perfect, but it's going to look pretty good once it's been painted and weathered a little bit. So yeah, we are almost there. And then once I'm done with the other wing, then I can start working on the landing gear. This is typical for Edward. A lot of the parts, they don't fit very well, but you know, if you're going to buy this set and use the kit supplied engines, these do fit. The wiring harnesses fit very, very well on the engines. And I suspect that the hydraulic lines for the braking systems here also fit real well on the landing gear, so I'm definitely going to use these. So yeah, those are the dogs we're fostering. They're barking. So yeah, and the rest of this stuff I'm not going to use. So we're moving along here. So I need to go ahead and finish the other wing, and then we'll move on to the landing gear. Hey everybody, I hope you enjoyed part 1 of our multi-part series on building and detailing the Revell-Monogram 1/48 scale B-24D. And subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up, and if you get the chance, visit our website at www.mikeshe.com. Have a great evening, and most importantly, happy scale modeling.